Hi, I'm here today with Daniel Bruckner from Tamr. So Daniel, I think it's a pretty well-known phenomenon in the data business that 80% of the data scientist's time is spent just getting the data ready to do the fun stuff, which is the analysis. One would think that that would be a problem that would go away when we kind of get rid of this historical legacy data and we start to code the data in a sort of more thoughtful way going forward.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you think that'll change?
So I think in the modern enterprise, the number of opportunities that exist around consuming the data is so hard to predict and has so much variety that kind of no matter how much preparation you're going to put in ahead of time, there are always going to be new uses of the data and kind of new requirements going forward. And so it's kind of in a dynamic state that's constantly changing. And unless you begin to have a system that lets you reuse work in preparing the data, then you're always going to have that level, that 80-20 rule is going to hold.
So I think a story that everyone's talking about is this move from the data warehouse to the data lake. Can you tell us a little bit more about how we should think about that?
Sure, yeah. So we see a lot of organizations moving from these traditional, more rigid data warehousing approaches that have fixed schemas. The requirements are kind of gathered ahead of time. Data's loaded ahead of time. And they're moving more to the open case of just throw all the data into some architecture, a uniform architecture, and then let data scientists figure it out after the fact. And it's kind of this data lake environment is a great opportunity to find more of what's in the data that nobody planned for originally. But it also creates challenges around integrating the data once it's in the lake and finding all those connections.
So with the data warehouse, we know that one of the big challenges is that the kinds of data that you're interested in and the format in which you want to keep the data is something that might be unpredictable. If that becomes less important, does that pose challenges for the companies that have an interest in protecting certain types of data format?
So do you mean sort of security requirements and privacy and that type of access? Or?
I'm thinking if it's easier for you to integrate data that's collected within different types of systems, does the specific system matter a lot less?
It does, and I'd say what ends up being important is sort of keeping track of the different semantics of the data. You know, what does data coming from let's say coming from the website about user interactions. What does that tell us about our customers that's different from, say, data in our CRM systems? How is it structured differently? And kind of being able to keep track of those types of just meaningful differences becomes where organizations can find value, keeping track of the connections across these different sources.
So how do managers handle the data curation process? Because that seems to be an extremely important issue right now for companies.
Yeah, so traditionally, data curation has been sort of a top-down exercise. It's especially moved forward in a sort of separately between IT on the one hand supporting the effort and the business users on the other who are consuming the data. And there will be long iteration cycles where the IT staff will gather requirements from business users. They'll put together a system that can serve data exactly how it's expected. And then maybe 18 months later, that system is ready. The problem is in those 18 months, the requirements have probably evolved and changed. And so what we're seeing is a move towards more bottom-up approaches where those sorts of connections aren't tried to companies don't try to find those ahead of time, the approach is just let's wait and see what happens. Let's get the raw data together in one place. Let's use an engine to connect it in different ways, and then find what comes out.
Okay. Thanks. Appreciate it, Daniel.
My pleasure. Thanks for talking to me.